If this speech opened your eyes, remember this. Truth doesn't fear being questioned, only lies do. In a world full of masks and performances, learning to see through the act is your real power. Don't settle for surface-level charm. Pay attention to patterns, energy, and honesty. Because once you understand human behavior, no one can manipulate your trust again. If you found this message valuable, hit that subscribe button, drop a like, and turn on the bell. Because we're diving deeper into the psychology of attraction, relationships, and the truths most people are too afraid to talk about. Stay sharp, stay aware, and keep leveling up. When you ask a woman about her body count and she responds immediately with a small, clean, and perfectly rounded number, it can sound a little too smooth. Real honesty doesn't come out rehearsed. It comes out raw, uncertain, and often with a pause. When someone is telling the truth about something personal, they usually need a moment to recall, to think, to gather their thoughts. But when an answer comes instantly, without hesitation, and sounds like it's been said before, that's when you should pay attention. It's not always about the number itself, it's about the delivery. A lie is often wrapped in confidence, while the truth tends to arrive imperfectly. A woman who's lying about her body count might have already prepared a number she believes sounds acceptable. She knows society's double standards, she knows how men might judge her, and she knows what kind of image she wants to protect. So when you ask the question, she doesn't think, she performs. The words come out effortlessly because she's rehearsed them in her mind, maybe even tested them in past conversations. There's no emotional processing behind it, no flicker of vulnerability, just a fast and tidy response designed to make you move on. But here's where awareness matters. Honesty is rarely that clean. A woman who's truly being open might show signs of internal debate. A small laugh, a sigh, maybe even a "why do you want to know?" before giving her answer. That hesitation isn't guilt, it's authenticity. It shows she's considering whether she feels safe enough to share something personal. On the other hand, a rehearsed answer often lacks that human element. It feels transactional. Question asked, number given, conversation closed. There's a sense of control, not openness. Pay attention to the tone, too. A practiced lie often carries a hint of defensiveness or overconfidence. It's firm but hollow, like a wall built to protect something fragile behind it. If she gives a number in a way that feels like she's trying to prove something. See, I'm not like that. It's not the number that's the problem, it's the energy behind it. The need to prove purity or control perception is often stronger in someone who's not being entirely truthful. It's not about catching someone in a lie, it's about understanding human psychology. When people fear judgment, they build masks. So the next time you hear a response that sounds too neat, don't rush to react. Instead, listen beyond the words. Notice her breathing, her eye movement, her tone. Is there a sense of honesty or performance? Lies aren't always told with bad intent. Sometimes they're told out of fear of losing respect. But for any relationship to be real, truth has to matter more than comfort. A rehearsed answer might protect her image, but an honest one builds real connection. If it sounds too perfect to be real, chances are it probably isn't. When a woman gets defensive or tries to change the topic the moment you ask about her body count, it's usually not just about the question itself. It's about what the question triggers inside her. Defensive behavior is a natural human response when someone feels cornered or exposed, but it often reveals more than the words themselves. If she immediately says things like, "Why does that even matter?" or "That's personal," she's not necessarily wrong to guard her privacy. But there's a difference between setting boundaries and avoiding accountability. the defensiveness, the irritation, or the sudden shift in tone doesn't come from confidence. It comes from discomfort. It's her way of diverting attention away from the truth she doesn't want to share. When someone is being honest, they rarely need to hide behind emotion. They can calmly answer, clarify, or even explain their perspective without raising their voice or turning the situation around. But a person who's hiding something instinctively tries to redirect the conversation. She might bring up your past, question your motives, or accuse you of being insecure just to put you on the defensive instead. This emotional redirection is a tactic, sometimes subconscious, to protect her image and avoid vulnerability. The goal isn't to explain, it's to deflect. The moment the topic starts to make her uncomfortable, she'll find a way to steer it elsewhere. You might notice small shifts in her body language too, crossing her arms, avoiding eye contact, leaning back, or even nervously laughing. These are micro signs of stress, the body's way of saying, I don't want to go here. Her words might say, you're being disrespectful, but her tone or timing might say something else. I'm afraid of what you'll think if you really knew. It's that fear of being judged that fuels defensiveness. And while it's human, it's also revealing. People who are confident in their truth rarely react explosively. They don't need to protect their story because it's already solid. Sometimes she'll flip the narrative entirely, making you feel guilty for even asking. She might say, you don't trust me, or I thought you were different, using emotional guilt to shut down the conversation. When this happens, the real issue isn't the body count, it's the lack of transparency. It's not about how many people she's been with, it's about why she can't comfortably be honest about it. Emotional manipulation in these moments is often a smokescreen to prevent you from pressing further. Understanding defensiveness isn't about blaming her, it's about recognizing emotional patterns. People lie most when they feel their truth won't be accepted. So if she reacts with anger, silence, or tears, don't focus on the surface emotion. Look at what's beneath it. True honesty feels grounded, calm, and secure. But when defensiveness appears instantly, when she tries to shift blame or avoid the question, that's when you know you've touched a nerve, and where the truth probably hides. When her timeline doesn't add up, it's one of the clearest indicators that something isn't lining up with the truth. Lies are hard to maintain because the brain naturally struggles to keep track of made-up details. When someone fabricates a story, they have to remember every version of it, the dates, the people, the sequence, and the emotions attached to it. Over time, those stories start to blur and crumble. So when a woman talks about her past relationships, but her claimed body count doesn't match the stories she tells, that inconsistency becomes a quiet red flag. Maybe she says she's only been with one or two people, yet she's shared stories about several serious relationships that each lasted months or years. Maybe she mentions experiences or trips that imply intimacy, but claims nothing physical happened. When her words and her narrative don't align, the truth usually sits somewhere between the lines. What makes inconsistencies powerful indicators is that they're often unintentional. A rehearsed lie can survive for a while, but small details eventually betray it. She might tell you one version of a story early in your relationship and a slightly different one later. The timelines shift, names change, or the emotional tone doesn't match the situation she describes. For example, she might talk about a guy who was just a friend in one conversation, then later mention they dated for a bit in another. Each time, the story morphs just enough to protect her image, but still fill the silence. And those small contradictions, if you're paying attention, reveal that she's editing her past, not sharing it. The reason people do this isn't always malicious. Sometimes it's self-protection. She might feel ashamed, judged, or afraid you'll see her differently if she's fully honest. So she rewrites her history in a way that feels more acceptable, not realizing that the inconsistencies themselves are more damaging than the truth would ever be. Because once you start noticing the cracks, trust begins to erode. Every new story becomes a puzzle piece that doesn't quite fit. You start questioning not only what's true, but also why it needed to be hidden in the first place. The key is to listen more than you ask. Let her talk freely about her past. The more natural the conversation, the easier it is to spot patterns. If the numbers, stories, or timelines don't align, don't confront her immediately. Just observe. People who are honest stay consistent even under pressure. People who lie have to adjust their story to match what they think you remember. Over time, the version control breaks down and the truth reveals itself. At the end of the day, lies about the past often stem from fear, not malice. But in relationships, inconsistency is still poison. A woman who can't tell a consistent story about her past is telling you something bigger. That honesty is negotiable when her image is at stake. And if that's true, the problem isn't her past. It's what she's willing to hide in the present. When someone constantly tries to prove their innocence, it's often because they feel guilty about something they're not saying. Over-justifying innocence is one of the most subtle yet revealing signs of dishonesty, especially when it comes to sensitive topics like body count. If she repeatedly says things like, "I'm not like other girls," or, "I don't just sleep around," it's not confidence speaking, it's insecurity. People who are comfortable with their truth don't need to convince anyone. Their energy is calm, grounded, and unbothered. But when someone keeps trying to convince you that they're different, it's because they're not sure you'd accept the truth if you really knew it. That constant reassurance becomes a defense mechanism, a way to protect themselves from potential judgment. When a woman lies about her past, she's not always doing it to manipulate you. Sometimes she's doing it to protect her self-image. She might believe that if she tells the truth, you'll lose respect for her. So she builds a narrative of innocence, one that feels safe and respectable. The over-explanations come out naturally because she's already internalized the fear of being misunderstood. She's not just lying to you, she's lying to herself, convincing her own mind that her story is more acceptable than it really is. That's why her tone feels defensive rather than relaxed, because deep down she knows she's maintaining an illusion, not sharing reality. You can usually sense over-justification in her tone and rhythm. She might repeat the same lines, overemphasize her morality, or use phrases that feel rehearsed. Instead of simply answering a question, she'll give a speech. Instead of being direct, she'll over-explain. The more she talks, the less she's actually saying. Real truth doesn't need a monologue, it stands on its own. But lies need structure, reasoning, and emotional cover. That's why over-justifying always sounds slightly performative. It's like she's trying to make sure you believe the version of her she wants you to see. This behavior can also be seen in how she responds to others' stories. For example, if a conversation about other women's pasts makes her overly defensive or judgmental, it's often projection. She's trying to separate herself from the kind of behavior she's secretly hiding. By criticizing others, she reinforces her own image of purity and control. It's not about those other women. It's about maintaining her mask. She wants to be seen as different because being seen as the same would threaten the persona she's built. Over-justifying isn't always about deceit in the traditional sense. Sometimes it's about emotional insecurity, the inability to be vulnerable without fearing rejection. But regardless of the reason, it creates distance in a relationship. Because when someone keeps trying to prove who they are, they stop allowing you to see who they really are. Authenticity doesn't need defense. It doesn't need to be explained, sold, or packaged. So when her words sound more like a commercial than a confession, understand that she's not being open, she's being careful. And in matters of truth, carefulness often means concealment. The body is an honest storyteller, even when the mouth isn't. When a woman lies about something personal, her body often reveals the truth her words are trying to hide. This is why body language is such a powerful indicator. It's almost impossible to control every micro expression, every twitch, every subtle shift in tone or movement. When she lies about her body count, the stress of keeping that lie hidden leaks through in physical ways. She might avoid eye contact, fidget with her fingers, play with her hair, or cross her arms in a self-protective gesture. These reactions aren't random. They're the body's way of shielding itself from emotional exposure. The moment she feels that the truth might surface, her body instinctively builds barriers. You might notice her posture changing. Maybe she leans back or suddenly becomes restless. She might smile too much or laugh awkwardly to fill the silence. The tone of her voice could shift slightly, becoming higher, faster, or even overly calm as she tries to sound collected. It's not the words that reveal the truth in these moments. It's the contrast between her confidence and her body's anxiety. When someone is being authentic, their body and their words are aligned. When they're hiding something, there's a disconnect. Her words may say, "I'm being honest," but her body whispers, "I'm not comfortable right now." Another tell is her breathing pattern. When people lie, their heart rate increases and their breathing becomes shallow. It's subtle, but you can feel it. The energy changes in the room. Suddenly, the air feels heavier. The moment feels more tense. That's because the body reacts to lying as a form of stress. It's not natural to suppress truth, so the nervous system activates a mild fight-or-flight response. Even her pupils might dilate slightly, or she might blink more often. These are all small signs that her body is experiencing internal conflict. But here's where emotional intelligence comes in. Not all nervousness means lying. Some women might get anxious simply because they're uncomfortable with the topic itself. The difference lies in consistency. If she's calm and open about other personal things, but suddenly tense and uneasy when the topic of her body count comes up, that's when you know it's not just discomfort, it's concealment. The shift in demeanor is what exposes the lie. Her reactions aren't consistent with her usual energy. Lies create friction inside the body. The mind tries to appear normal, but the subconscious can't keep up. So even if her words are perfectly smooth, her gestures betray her. The more she talks, the more the signs appear. Avoiding your eyes when answering, adjusting her seat, touching her face or neck. These aren't coincidences, they're her body trying to manage guilt, shame, or anxiety. The truth is, body language never lies. It's the one form of communication we can't fully fake. So when her actions don't match her words, believe her body first. It speaks the language of truth long before her mouth ever does. When a woman reacts with strong emotion, the moment you press her for honesty, it's often not about the question itself. It's about what that question represents. Emotional reactions are powerful tools, consciously or unconsciously, used to shift control of the conversation. If she starts crying, gets angry, or accuses you of not trusting her, it's a sign that she's trying to protect herself from something deeper. People often use emotion to divert attention away from the truth because emotion disarms logic. Once you start feeling guilty or sympathetic, the focus shifts from the question to your reaction. It's no longer about her honesty, it's about your sensitivity. That's how emotional manipulation subtly replaces accountability. When someone is being honest, they may feel uncomfortable but rarely defensive. They can express vulnerability without trying to shut you down. But when someone is hiding something, emotional intensity becomes a defense mechanism. It's a strategy, maybe not a deliberate one, but an instinctive way to end the conversation before it digs too deep. She might say things like, "Why are you even asking me that?" Or, "I thought you trusted me." These statements sound emotional, but their real purpose is to make you question your right to ask. Instead of answering, she creates emotional smoke, tears, anger, or guilt to cloud your clarity. This kind of reaction often leaves you confused. You start thinking maybe you did something wrong by asking, and that's exactly what emotional manipulation does. It makes you doubt your own perception. Suddenly, you're the one apologizing, and she's the one comforted, even though she never answered the question. It's a subtle shift in power dynamics. By making you feel guilty for being curious, she avoids accountability while also reinforcing emotional control in the relationship. The truth becomes secondary to peacekeeping. But here's what you need to understand. Genuine emotion and manipulative emotion feel different. Real emotion seeks understanding. It wants to connect. Manipulative emotion seeks escape. It wants to end the conversation. A woman who's telling the truth might show sadness, but she'll still communicate. She'll say, "This makes me uncomfortable, but I'll be honest with you." That's vulnerability. But the woman who's hiding will use emotion as a shield. She'll cry without explanation, raise her voice, or storm off. Anything to protect the version of herself she's trying to maintain. The deeper psychology behind this behavior is fear. Fear of judgment, rejection, or losing control. When people feel their mask slipping, they use emotion to glue it back in place. It's not always malicious, but it's manipulative in effect. It stops communication instead of deepening it. The best thing you can do in that moment is stay calm and observe. Don't get pulled into the emotional storm. That's where logic dies. If every time truth is approached, she reacts dramatically, that's not sensitivity, that's strategy. Because real truth can handle being questioned, but lies can't survive emotional exposure.